last day with the DBQ. We've talked thesis. We've talked context. We've talked using documents to support your thesis. Now we need to look beyond the documents. We need to travel through time to meet the actual source. What was going on in this person's world that made them write this document? Today, we review sourcing on the DBQ. Tired of the last two examples, Rome is dead, and the Portuguese Empire did enough damage in the Indian Ocean. Let's go back to another classic, the 2018 Railroads and Empire Building DBQ. This is another one that gets used a lot online because it's a pretty decent one. But I don't care about thesis, I don't care about context today. Today is all about sourcing. But first, let's talk about what the goal of sourcing is. You need to show that you comprehend the document more than just what's written on the page. You need to get into the head of these authors. Transport to the room that they're writing in. Tap them on the shoulder. Try to figure out a few things. Who is this person? Why are they writing this? Who is supposed to be reading this? What's going on outside of this room that may have led to the creation of this document? That's a lot to figure out, but luckily, there's an acronym. HIPPO. H, historical context. I, intended audience. P, for purpose. P, for point of view. The last O is for outside information, which really doesn't fit here, but I just really wanted the acronym to be HIPPO. So let's go back to the room with the author of that document. Let's source 4 documents, one for each of the HIPPO ways. I'm not going to read you these documents, so feel free to pause on the screen if you want to read them a little bit more than I'm just going over them right now. Oh, and the prompt for this one might be helpful. The prompt is asking how railroads affected the process of empire building. First H, historical context. Let's do document 1. This is a petition from high caste Indians to the British asking for segregated train cars so their high caste friends don't have to huddle with the masses. So once you've used this document to support whatever railroad empire building thesis you came up with, then you source it. This is a perfect opportunity for historical context. It's basically the Star Wars crawl just for this document. In this case, it's going to be about imperialism. Dude, one more Star Wars reference and I'm out and I'm not coming back. Okay, but technically this is a callback to a previous Star Wars reference. This isn't a new Star Wars reference. Oh, you're right. That's facts. Millennium Falcon. I'm out. Oh. So for this document, you could bring up all the imperial background as to how the British view all the Indians as one subgroup due to social Darwinism, or talk about how the British East India Company or later the British Raj built the railroads in India and ruled over the Indians. Don't go crazy here, but give some historical context to what's going on in this document. Next up, I, for intended audience. This is the one that's most likely to jump out at you. Why? Because it'll be written in the source line, like this document's written by this person to this other person. Of course, the one that we're using here isn't that blatant, but you will notice from time to time on DBQs that you're going to run into a source and it's going to say this is written to the king, or this was written to this committee. And so that should jump out at you as to, oh, I should look for intended audience here. This one isn't that blatant. It just calls this a government report. But when you read it, it's definitely meant for the eyes of the Ottoman Sultan. So for intended audience, you can't just say, well, this was intended for the Sultan to read. You need to sit in the room with this author. Why do you want the Sultan to see this? How is the fact that you want the Sultan to see this affecting what you're writing right now? And it's real easy to see it in this document. He's very praising of the Sultan. He states how the new railroad being proposed would make the Sultan look so great and show his immense power. So the intended audience of this document was the Ottoman government, but more specifically the Sultan, which is why the author included such blatant flattery to the Sultan's power and high regard. Are you getting sourcing yet? It's not so much the content of the documents. Use that stuff for thesis and supporting an argument. This is a straightforward look at the documents themselves, and more specifically in the world and reasoning as to why they were created. All right, next up is P, for purpose. This one is the most used, but technically all of them are purpose in some way, shape, or form. Tap the author on the shoulder. Dude, what are you trying to do here? What is this document's purpose? Let's do document 6 for purpose. In this doc, the French governor of a West African colony is advocating for a railroad to be built in West Africa. Okay, Ernest Roumet, what's the purpose of this document? There's 2 different ways you can go here. He's claiming that this will help to save West Africans from their own savagery and barbarism. So you could say the purpose is the white man's burden of modernizing the West Africans. I mean, he literally says it's their duty as a civilized nation to build a railroad here. Or you could include that the whole purpose of imperialism in the first place, and this document specifically, is to get the raw materials from places like West Africa, and railroads would help to expedite that process. All right, the final P is for point of view. This one asks you to sit in the seat where the author is sitting. Who is this person? What is their worldview? Beyond that, how does that affect the content of the document? Let's look at document 7. Here, we have Lieutenant Colonel Gardner writing about Indian railways in a British magazine. Who are you, Lieutenant Colonel Gardner? What's your deal? The document talks about how the railroads are so amazing because they are uniting the formerly divided people of India. So what's his point of view? He's a British officer advocating for more railroads. He's praising the railroad and the positive effects they're having while blatantly disregarding any negative that may come from them. We aren't even reading the whole DBQ at this point, but you can already juxtapose what he's saying versus what the high caste Hindus were saying about the trains back in document 1. Anyways, I would highlight the point of view of Gardner as a British officer whose words are praising the British railroad building in India and ignoring any of the ills that came along with it. Best part, he wrote this in 1913. 2 years later, Gandhi comes back from South Africa to India. Guess how he gets around India spreading his message of nonviolence? Railroads. So you're not wrong, Gardner. The railroads are uniting the people, just probably not in the way a British officer would have liked them to be united. More specifically, against the British. Okay, so that's Hippo. You have 4 ways that you can source these documents. But you don't have to find all 4 ways of sourcing a document. And you don't have to source all 7 documents. You need to source 3 of the 7 documents, and you can source those 3 in any way you want. Do 3 purposes, do 3 intended audiences, mix and match. It doesn't matter. Now, not every document is going to be sourceable, but you only need to do 3 of them. Also, do 4. You know you're going to mess one up, do 4. Just do it, source 4 of them. So that's DBQ. The only point we didn't mention is the complexity point, and I'm trying to keep this video under 3 hours, so don't worry about it. It's super rare, and honestly, it's not worth the effort. We've covered all the content. We've identified and explained the SAQs, and we just spent 4 days on the DBQ. But there is one more essay to talk about. See you tomorrow.